They made another one of these! You all saw me rip apart God's Not Dead at Easter, a propaganda religious movie that shoves Christianity down your throat and atheism is pure evil. If you're a Christian, you're a perfect dainty little angel, and if you're an atheist, you are Satan. But lo and behold, here we are one sequel later. This was also poorly received despite its box office success, many criticising its propaganda. It even hides behind the fact that, like the first one, it's based on real cases. But it was exposed that all of these cases were actually Christians shoving their religion down unwilling atheists' throats, so it's still irrelevant. How can everyone hate these and they still keep making them?
Oh, I love to hear the song of creation.
And I'm already pissed off. Great job, guys. And Melissa Joan Hart is in it. Now I'm even more pissed off! So the opening credits play as the pastor from the last film accidentally kicks a stool, but it's completely unrealistic because he doesn't even call the stool a fuckface when he does it. Then he gets coffee spilled on and we see the woman from the last film who was diagnosed with cancer. Melissa Joan Hart does nothing, really. And we're also introduced to a young girl called Brooke starting college. She also has a best friend who looks familiar. Maybe she was in the last film, I don't really care to remember.
We're all upset.
So Melissa is a teacher at the college while she also cares for her ill grandfather.
I take you out for bacon and eggs this morning, my treat.
Not after your last cholesterol test. Besides, I have some papers I have to grade before the staff meeting.
I'm 81 years old, and bacon is not gonna be what kills me.
This movie is! Oh, and every teacher hates their job and bitches about the students, while Melissa is the wholesome one who loves all of them.
The older I get, the more difficult these kids are to deal with.
I totally agree. Yesterday I just about snatched up Tim Webster. That boy had me on my last nerve.
Well, I happen to think that difficult students can be a blessing.
Gee, I wonder which one's the Christian and which ones are the atheists. And then the black guy from the first film comes back to meet the pastor. Great, I wonder how long until their conversations piss me off again.
Maybe they just need a little more time.
So Melissa defies all realism by teaching the kids but actually making it fun, but she notices that Brooke is feeling low. However, she won't tell her what's wrong. Until the very next scene. So that was pointless. No, you see, it's character development because she showed reluctance to open up for about 5 seconds. She is a tortured soul.
I don't know about that.
So it turns out that her brother has passed away and she just wishes she had 5 more minutes to talk to him. But of course they have to add religion to it.
Did your brother believe there was something more?
That had literally nothing to do with what she just said. Stop trying to turn everything into a religious commentary.
You never let anything get to you. How do you do that? Jesus.
But the pastor, hit his leg, got coffee spilled on him, he was having a terrible day, and that was getting him down. And he's a pastor. So how come it works for you and not him? Isn't he closer to God? Your logic already makes no sense!
That's correct!
Meanwhile, the cancer woman reveals to the band from the original that her cancer is gone. Makes all the tension in the first film kind of pointless.
That's incredible.
I know, I can't believe it.
Isn't that what you prayed for?
Yes, of course.
Again, does this mean every single person who's passed away from cancer, just didn't pray hard enough? They didn't want to live that much, so God was like, nah, sorry, you just didn't try, you didn't cry enough. How do these morons write this shit and not realise how fucking offensive it is? Well, maybe your grandfather will be more tolerable.
You okay, Grace?
Yeah, I just can't stop thinking about Brooke. She's searching. She's hurting.
Yeah, that's the thing about atheism. It doesn't take away the pain, it just takes away the hope.
1, she never said she was an atheist. You were the arseholes who brought up religion. She could be an agnostic, a Catholic, she could even be a Christian, just not an uptight, preachy douchebag like you arseholes. 2, how does being an atheist take away your hope? I said it before, and I'll say it again. Us atheists, we don't believe we're going to go up to heaven. We don't believe we're going to linger around as invisible dead people. We don't believe in an afterlife. So therefore, we treasure our time on earth more. We only get one chance at life, so we embrace everything. And again, the pastor proved that Jesus doesn't take away your pain. He was having a crap day. The guy in the first film at the end prayed and then died anyway. You're making no sense!
Well, that's it for me. I'm going to bed. Love you.
I love you better.
That doesn't make any sense.
Love you first.
That's unfair.
That doesn't make any sense. So Brooke starts to move to college, and I am not joking. A random mover even gives her a damn Bible they found in her brother's room. Piss off!
Are you okay?
So Melissa teaches a history class about Gandhi when Brooke steps in and compares some of his words to Jesus, which Melissa passes on to the lesson. Pretty harmless stuff, nothing's gonna come of this. Meanwhile, the gay Asian guy from the first film meets up with the pastor to ask some questions about religion, but it turns out Melissa is actually in big trouble for that class. Why? Like, big trouble. This is the entire setup for the movie. She gets sued, she goes to court, it's all over television. Because she answered a simple question about Jesus. Because remember, Christians are all hated, feel sorry for them. This doesn't fucking happen, you attention-seeking Jehovah's Witnesses!
And your answer incorporated specific, detailed reference to those teachings that included Scripture itself. The words of Jesus.
Yes.
What were you thinking, Grace?
What is your problem? She answered a question! What the fuck? And they even ban prayers and moments of silence. Get bent! No one is this evil! And they even banned Brooke from talking to Melissa ever again, inside or out of school. Which I'm pretty sure they can't actually do, but maybe they prayed for it, I don't know.
I still wouldn't do it.
So Melissa meets with her attorney, played by Jesse Metcalfe, and I must admit, he does come across as really charming.
Tom Endler, your union-appointed attorney.
Oh, you don't look like a lawyer.
Thank you.
He's so cool, I actually really like him.
Criminal law. No offense, but I'm not a criminal.
Don't be so sure of that.
Oh, come on! This is ridiculous that he even says that no other lawyer wanted to take on her case. She answered a question! This movie clearly takes place in a reality unknown to humans.
If for whatever reason you're not happy with me, you're on your own. You know, you're free to hire your own attorney out of your own pocket. Educational law isn't exactly a common specialty.
So what's the good news?
I don't like to lose, and I'm willing to fight for you.
Are you a believer?
Does that matter? Oh, you're an atheist? Well, piss off then. I don't want you defending my case in a court of law and saving my job, asshole. Fuck you bitch!
You mean a Christian? No, but I think that's an advantage.
Oh. Actually, that's quite an interesting setup, that he's an atheist and he's defending a Christian case, and I'm sure they'll mess it up. Oh, and she agrees, but only reluctantly. What an ungrateful bitch! Yeah, I guess maybe you can help me, you atheist scum. So the pastor relays the Asian kid's questions to the black guy, and does this man ever stop smiling? Meanwhile, Melissa prays for help. Why did God let her get in trouble in the first place? She said God keeps her up, doesn't get her down. And don't say free will, because if he can't affect free will, this prayer here means he can't help her now, so it's also entirely pointless.
A disciplinary notice in Ms. Wesley's file stating the school board's objections to her behavior.
She answered a question! She didn't give the kids drugs or punch them in the face or take a shit on her desk. She answered a fucking question!
I'm not going to argue with you.
So they offer her minor disciplinary action if she just apologises for answering a fucking question, which her lawyer agrees to, but she refuses at first, so he tries to talk her into it.
It's the wrong decision.
Is it? I would rather stand with God and be judged by the world than stand with the world and be judged by God.
Okay, that actually is a really good line. But again, why is this getting her down? Jesus shouldn't allow that.
Nice try.
So they decide to suspend her without pay, and they even visit Brooke's parents about this. Is this really such a big deal?
Miss Wesley is an employee of the school board. We win in court and we establish her misconduct as said paid employee. Well, there's nothing to change his policy faster than a big, expensive settlement. We're going to prove once and for all that God is dead.
He sounds like a fucking supervillain! Atheists don't act this way. We just don't care. These movies are awful. Over the top, abomination, cliche propaganda bullshit disguised as heartwarming stories, and they make me sick.
I'll work on that.
So these two arseholes hang out for a bit. Let's see what's going on here.
What are you doing?
I'm just, reading the paper while my laptop goes through my online jury orientation.
Shouldn't you be paying attention?
Please remember, consumption of alcoholic beverages, non-prescription drugs, and weapons are prohibited in the courtroom.
Wait, so we can't even listen to people mention alcohol or drugs? He's that uptight. These guys must be a hoot at parties.
Isn't it your civic duty?
Theoretically, yeah, but Matthew 22:14.
Oh, many are called, few are chosen.
Exactly.
And then he quotes the Bible. Piss off. So they go to court, the lawyers meet, but look, he even smirks like a damn supervillain.
All rise for the Honorable Judge Robert Stennis.
Ernie Hudson? Ernie Hudson is in this. They got Ernie fucking Hudson! Ernie Hudson!
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
What does it say? It says you're a psychic?
Yes.
Ah. Do you know who's going to win this case? No, don't answer that.
Okay, that was funny. Oh, and they have to agree on who gets to be in the jury. We literally get an entire montage of them questioning each and every one of them about their beliefs. This is one of the most single-force plots I've ever seen. Oh, and the pastor gets on the jury, because of course he does.
Well, it seems that for every question you answered, 3 or 4 more questions spring up.
Yeah, but that's a good thing, right?
No.
Here in Luke's account, Jesus says, "Do unto others as you have them do unto you." But how is that possible? How can I react to the needs of everyone else the same as my own, even for one day, let alone my whole life? And how can I reconcile my inability to do so with Scripture?
Yeah. That's good questions.
No, they're actually really stupid questions. He doesn't understand the very simple philosophy of treat people how you would like to be treated. Stop trying to be clever, you are dumb. Well, let's see how they're doing in court.
You know what hate is, Tom? I'm not talking about the fairy tale stuff. I mean real hate. I hate what people like your clients stand for.
Atheists don't act this way!
Let me put it this way. I don't mean to offend anyone who may be a Muslim here, and I do not want to slight the Prophet of Islam, but if you were to ask me a question concerning the Quran, the sacred text of Islam, and I could come up with the answer with great speed and accuracy, and I could quote the proper surah or chapter, then it would be reasonable for you to infer that I was not only a follower of Islam, but that I considered it to be superior to all other forms of religion.
Look, the thing is, he kind of has a point here. Some Christians do look down on others, especially atheists, and try to put themselves as superior because of their beliefs. But she never did that! She answered a fucking question!
If I did this in a house of worship, that would be fine. But if I did it in an 11th grade classroom, in a public school, that would be preaching. Not teaching.
She answered a question! They even claim that she took this question as an opportunity to preach about Jesus. How?
You don't want to do this.
So Brooke and her friends protest the school before the cancer chick gets informed and wants to meet with her because she was such a vital part of the first film. No, she was completely pointless, and in fact she's completely pointless in this film too. That's quite impressive. 2 movies, and she's actually served no purpose. Take her out of either film, nothing changes.
Her lesson plan for second period AP history that morning, it didn't include any mention of God or Jesus. She didn't have a Bible sitting on her desk in plain view. She didn't start her class with a blessing. She didn't lead her students in prayer. No. All she did was answer a question.
Thank you! I must admit, the dialogue here is actually pretty good, and he's right.
Mr. Kane will insist loudly and often that faith isn't on trial here. But that is exactly what is on trial. The most basic human right of all, the right to believe.
Honestly, this whole speech is actually really well written. So Cancer Chick meets with Brooke. It's pointless.
Mr. Thornley, how did you feel when you found out that your daughter had been exposed to faith-based teachings in class?
Well, it felt like we had been violated.
Really? Violated because her teacher said Jesus. I could kind of understand if they were a small child and therefore easy to manipulate, but she's 16!
Mrs. Rizzo, did Ms. Wesley talk about faith issues on the school campus?
All the time. Everybody knows she's a Christian. I don't think she'd chew a stick of gum without praying first. It makes everyone feel awkward.
Thank you.
I love how offended she gets. I guess it's like vegans. You don't need to tell everyone all the time. No one cares. But she gets questioned for specific incidents of Melissa pushing her religion onto others, which she can't seem to name. Which I find hard to believe. I mean, she was asked, oh, how are you so happy? Jesus.
And did you ever consider that your disapproval of her faith might taint your ability to represent her properly?
Objection. Speculative.
Sustained.
God bless you.
Careful, or you might end up on trial.
Mr. Endler.
Okay, that was funny. He even points out the fact that the school is named after Martin Luther King, despite him being a reverend, and he then uses King's work where he references God in the Bible to get his point across. And I can't fault this. This dialogue is actually amazing.
In other words, they're facts, but they're just facts that are too dangerous for discussion.
The word I would use would be controversial.
But aren't facts just facts? I mean, there's nothing controversial about 2 + 2 = 4, or E = mc squared, or the date man landed on the moon. So why the controversy about these facts?
But uh-oh, the evil douche fights back, pointing out that Melissa invited this lady to a religious service during work hours. I love how he's so smug about it too, like he's formed some dastardly plan. Newsflash! Inviting someone to a church service isn't illegal! And also, why is it taking them this long, we're nearly an hour in, to point this out? You're here about her belief, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, 7 years ago she said, hey, wanna go to church, love? Oh, what a bitch! But also turns out that she accepts donations to a Christian charity in her classroom as well. Again, why wasn't this mentioned earlier? But then the cancer bird finds Melissa for some groundbreaking character development.
These people, they're looking to destroy you, and I don't just mean financially. Do you think it's worth it?
I hope so.
So do I.
Wow. That was pointless. Meanwhile, the pastor and black man bump into the car salesman from the first film, who's now a waiter. What, is he the Stan Lee of these movies?
Well, same guy.
Same guy.
Amazing.
Subtle. But who cares? Have another subplot where the service is being interrogated to determine what they can or can't preach about. Come on, this doesn't happen. And FYI, this subplot is never mentioned or touched upon again. It's completely pointless. And have another speech about never denying God, because that never gets old.
I think you're wrong.
So the lawyer heads to Melissa's to have some Chinese food and go through some paperwork.
So is this what you always saw yourself doing, the lawyer thing?
No, I wanted to be Batman.
I love this guy.
How about you? Your parents have you all set to go to the convent?
Actually, there were no bedtime prayers in my childhood. I was raised in a house without much faith.
Okay, so in these movies, if you're an atheist, you had to have had some awful experience with Christianity, and if you're a Christian, you had to have had some awful experience with atheism in the past. Blow me! Also, how was she not raised with a religious family? Her grandfather's a heavy Christian! Make up your mind!
The sign said, "Who do you say that I am?" And as I read it, I could hear the Lord speak to me.
No, that's schizophrenia. So the Asian kid gets told by his dad that he's let down his entire family because, you know, atheists are the devil. They even only capitalize the word God whenever the son says it and not the father. Because he's an atheist. So he's an asshole, in case you didn't know. He even claims to do anything for God, but who cares? We've had 2 movies and I still don't give a shit. He gets disowned by his father. Should have just said he was gay.
That was my idea.
He sneaks into church to play the piano and sing a song when Brooke interrupts. Yeah, how he didn't spot her on his way in is beyond me, but she has loads of questions about religion for him now. I must admit though, they do have a really interesting angle here. So there's enough historical evidence to conclude that Jesus the man actually did exist. That is a historical fact. Whether he was the son of God or not is subjective, but he was spoken about in the classroom in a historical context in a history class. And faith and or religion was never once brought into it. And them asking her to not discuss a historical figure is pure discrimination. But then she ruins it by forcing him to read a book about Jesus.
I'm not sure I follow.
So Brooke continues to bond with the Asian kid, and it turns out her brother kept his religion hidden before he died, whatever. We have more subplots in Superman 3 now, so we've got to move on.
Thank you for dying on the cross for me.
Makes no sense. He came down to Earth just to die. Oh well, she prays and finally accepts him into her life. They bring a religious historian into court to discuss the evidence of Jesus' existence, and I must admit, this is actually quite interesting.
Can you help me prove the existence of Jesus Christ?
Absolutely. Beyond any reasonable doubt.
How so?
Actually, this court already affirmed it when we were called into session and the date was given. Our calendar has been split between BC and AD based on the birth of Jesus, which is quite a feat if he never existed. Beyond that, historian Gary Habermas lists 39 ancient sources for Jesus, from which he enumerates more than 100 reported facts about his life, teachings, crucifixion, and resurrection. In fact, the historical evidence for Jesus' execution is so strong that one of the most famous New Testament scholars in the world, Gerd Ludemann of Germany, said Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable.
But they soon ruin it.
I put it this way. Denying the existence of Jesus doesn't make him go away. It merely proves that no amount of evidence will convince you.
Well, no. Isn't that the other way around? I mean, evolution has concrete evidence that proves there's no need for a higher power. Evolution proves how plants, animals, humans, life began and evolved over the millenniums. That's a scientific fact, and energy transference after death proves how we die and disintegrate without the need or cause of an afterlife. And Christians, usually when presented with this evidence, dismiss it entirely. They refuse to buy scientific facts. And also, if God or Jesus appeared right in front of me, or a ghost, and, tap danced and said, hello, look at me, then I would believe it.
Do you believe this?
So the pointless cancer chick looks for the pastor, but ends up finding the pointless black guy. He'll do. So they talk, but why the hell are they sat so far away from each other? It just looks really awkward. Anyway, she's somehow struggling to believe, despite her cancer being cured because of prayer, apparently. What the hell happened? Who cares? These subplots are terrible. Then the pastor starts to feel a sharp pain in his chest. Good.
Amy, it sounds like you're taking the side of Grace Wesley here.
And they're still talking about it on the news, and everyone is against her. Police, lawyers, newsreaders, nobody acts this way or cares this much. Well, look, the pastor has a heart attack. Good.
I guess that proves there is no God, because they just lost the only juror they could count on.
He's got a point, but no one acts this way. No atheist is that evil. Oh, look, he's dying. Where's God now? There's even this stupid picket gang outside. She didn't do anything wrong. She answered a fucking question. So they then question a homicide detective, but just listen.
How many of your cold cases were solved through the use of DNA evidence?
None, not one. That's often popular on TV, but our department has never had the good fortune of solving a cold case with DNA.
Well, how do most of these cases get solved?
Often by examining eyewitness claims, witness claims that were made many years earlier, even though often our witnesses are now deceased.
Is this forced enough for you yet?
And did you consider that the 4 accounts might be part of a conspiracy designed to promote belief in a fledgling faith?
Yeah, you have to consider conspiracies when assessing eyewitness accounts. But successful conspiracies typically involve the fewest number of people. It's a lot easier for 2 people to lie and keep a secret than it is for 20.
Good point, but it's still not impossible. If I think I'm Tom Cruise, I'm nuts. If I find 5 people who agree that I'm Tom Cruise, it doesn't make me Tom Cruise.
And that's really the problem with the conspiracy theories related to the apostles in the first century. There are just far too many of them trying to hold this conspiracy for far too long a period of time. And far worse, they're experiencing pressure like no other, unimaginable pressure. Every one of these folks was tortured and died for what they claimed to see, and none of them ever recanted their story.
So? Sometimes people continue a lie for so long that they kind of convince themselves that it's the truth.
I'll start with a passage in which Jesus is in front of Caiaphas at a hearing. It says here, "Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, 'Prophesy to us, Christ, who hit you?'" Now that seems like a very simple request, given that the people who hit him are standing right in front of him. This makes no sense. Why would it be prophecy to be able to tell you who hit you? But it's not until you read Luke that you get an answer to this. He says, "The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, 'Prophesy, who hit you?'" So now we know why this was a challenge, because Luke tells us the thing that Matthew left out, that he was actually blindfolded at the time this took place. This is very common, this kind of unintentional eyewitness support that fills in a detail that the first witness left out.
Alright, this dialogue is actually pretty clever and well done.
When I examined the Gospels, I was trying to determine if these were accurate, reliable accounts, in spite of any differences that might be between the accounts.
And as a devout Christian, you feel you succeeded?
No, Mr. Kane, I think you misunderstand me. When I began this study, I was a devout atheist.
Of course you were! Piss the fuckity fuck off!
Objection.
But Brooke soon bursts in to defend her. She admits she brought up God first, but regretfully confesses that she spoke to her about faith outside of school as well.
Why didn't you tell me about this?
You didn't ask, and I didn't think it mattered.
Do you think discussing faith didn't matter? You're in a case about your faith with students, and you didn't think it was worth mentioning that you discussed faith with a student!
Your Honor, this is irrelevant.
He also uses it against Melissa that she didn't point the child to a shrink when she went to her with her problems. And they're convinced she manipulated her into religion and Christianity after Brooke admits that she wouldn't have gotten into it if she hadn't become involved, which is when they give up and prepare for the worst. Oh. But I thought Jesus stopped that from happening. He doesn't let you get down.
Doesn't matter.
So Brooke rings the cancer bird and thinks she's ruined everything, while Melissa feels like she can't even feel Jesus anymore. And then loads of kids show up to her house to sing some hymns. Because that's not awkward and cringy. And how the hell are there this many Christians now? Earlier someone just said they believe in God and everyone would freak out. Now there's loads. But look, the Christians are watching from the hospital.
She needs me on that jury.
Have faith, David. God's plan is at work.
So God planned to nearly kill him for a laugh? The Asian kid even visits him and is convinced that God wants him to become a minister. I want him to become an interesting character! And then we have a picketing war between Christians and atheists, and more side with the Christians because of course they do, but trouble arises back in court.
Where's Tom?
Well, that line was pointless. I mean, we already saw the empty chair and Melissa looking around. But he has a badass sequence walking through the corridor so you know he's about to drop the mic. So he questions Melissa and asks her to apologise, even if she doesn't mean it, but she still refuses.
Why can't you do that, Grace?
Because I don't believe I did anything wrong.
Well, as your attorney, I'm advising you to do it anyway. To at least pretend that you're sorry and throw yourself on the mercy of the court.
That would be a lie.
So what? Everyone lies.
Not everyone.
Well, they do. Come on. That's just some naive thinking there. He even reveals a personal story of her admitting that she feels like Jesus spoke to her personally and asked her to do something, but he's acting like a bit of a douche now.
Didn't you say that he asked you a question?
That was personal. You weren't supposed to.
I don't care.
He flips and demands they destroy her for her stupid logic and her supposed connection with God, but man, this is getting intense.
Mr. Inler, you are the board and I charge you with contempt.
I accept the charge because I have nothing but contempt for these proceedings. If we're going to insist that a Christian's right to believe is subordinate to all other rights, then it's not a right. Somebody is always going to be offended.
He's not wrong, but the court is adjourned for the jury to make their decision.
She hasn't got a prayer.
Let's go.
Remind me to send him a thank you note.
Gee, I wonder what's gonna happen. And then we go to another concert from the same band of the original as the singer asks everyone to pray for Melissa. Again, if someone doesn't pray hard enough, they don't get shit. You prayed for the guy in the last film and he died anyway. But the court fills back up and I can't help but feel it would have been hilarious if after all of this she still loses. But no, what a shock. She wins, and despite everyone hating her and being against her for the entire movie, they're all smiles and celebrate now, two-faced bastards.
Nice shoes.
What? What was the point in that? It wasn't funny or anything. So her lawyer reveals that he had to go the mean route and not tell her, so the reaction was real in order to sway the jury. Man, I love him. He's such a cool character. But isn't he literally just saying he guilt-tripped the jury and she didn't actually win because she deserved it? He literally just said they had to guilt-trip them with her emotions. And also, are they saying what? They prayed, so God changed the votes?
On my knees with my hands lifted.
God's not dead.
And the title still makes no sense! Oh, and remember how kick-ass the song was in the last one? Well, this one is so forgettable. Oh, and also, what was the point in the pastor having a heart attack? What, to get him out of the jury? Because he wasn't in the jury to begin with. So all of that was pointless. In fact, now that I think about it, his character does nothing in this film. At least in the first one, he helps Josh, but his character in this one, entirely pointless. He benefits nothing.
Live outside the courthouse here in Hope Springs.
You did it! God is good!
Ah, yeah, so they do in fact believe that God is like this cheating teenager who snuck into the jury room and changed the votes.
God's not dead, he's surely alive. Come on. God's not dead, he's surely alive.
Way to remind me of a much better song.
God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, rolling.
And they sing a dumbed down, shittier version of the original one. Notice how much better the first one sounded? Oh, and there's an after-credit scene where the pastor actually gets arrested for refusing to turn in his sermons to the government to leave a cliffhanger for the third movie. Will you stop making these?
What do we do now?
Same as always, Martin. We pray. In faith.
But why did God let him get arrested in the first place? These movies make no fucking sense! This is so much worse than the original. It has a few interesting pieces, but the rest is so much more over the top, offensive, one-sided and ridiculous than the first film. The acting is actually really good and it's shot extremely well, but my god, it's just a clusterfuck of epic proportions.